Hello class and welcome to the first module of Marketing and Public Relations. I hope you've all had a good summer. I'm excited to get started with this class and I hope you are as well. Besides this module, we will cover branding, audience research, explore digital marketing, we'll do a segment on customer experience, and we'll end with a module on effective communications. And along the way, we will have a few guests that will join us, but today it's just me, so let's get started. So today we're going to cover a couple of topics. We're going to do a whole kind of area about thinking about marketing and the role of marketing in the organization. And we'll take a look inside the marketing toolkit, and we'll finish by pondering over the interplay of marketing and programming. This is why I love marketing. It's all things. Good marketing is disciplined. It relies on data, research. It's objective and rational, and it's also creative. It's wordplay, it's design, it's emotional. But it's also a big challenge because to be good at both of these things, you have to be able to sort of hold them in your hand at the same, in your hand at the same time. But even when you are marketing to an entire audience or a customer base, I love this sentiment here, you're still simply speaking to a single human at any given time. So the best marketing really doesn't, it connects directly to you in a kind of emotional or personal way. In fact, the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing at all, because it doesn't feel like marketing when you watch a poignant advertisement or connect emotionally with the subject. It doesn't feel like marketing when you read a genuinely positive customer review of a kind wait staff or an usher who went out of their way. Yet those are all aspects of marketing. So I get asked this question every so often, and this is an important distinction and one that is often overlooked. If someone on your board or anyone says, just go out there and sell, then they probably don't understand the difference. To quote Peter Drucker, the aim of marketing is to make the selling part superfluous. In effect, sales is what happens when marketing is done right. It's the setup. But if we think about marketing as an organizational strategy, what role does it play in moving the organization forward? How does marketing animate the organization? We know it's got to deliver revenue. We know it needs to animate the mission, and it needs to focus, most importantly, the organization on the customer. We can also think of marketing as a kind of prism. It's kind of the other reason I love marketing, because it really does color everything in the organization. And the reason for that is that marketing at its best really focuses on the customer. So we're going to talk a little bit now about internal and external, and we're going to get into a little bit of mission statement talk as well, because mission statements are so reflective of organizations and reflective of how they think about marketing. But here are some warning signs, I like to say, warning signs that you're in an inward-facing organization. Inherent desirability. Arts administrators often find it hard to believe that any right-thinking person would not wish to attend a particular concert or performance, or that they find, to be incredibly moving and wonderful. Audience research is afforded a minor role in an organization like this, an organization that acts first and really sort of asks audience-related questions later. This type of inward orientation inevitably leads to problems later on. But a customer-centric arts organization usually has a really good idea of who their customers are and their potential customers. And when making decisions, they always ask, how will this affect our customers? There's something in marketing called the 4 Ps. I would add that there's actually a 5th P. How will our audiences react to this decision is a question that needs to be asked. And it shouldn't rely on only one approach, but should employ these 5 Ps of product, price, place, promotion, and people. People being the 5th part, turning customers or consumers into fans. And an externally focused organization is always trying to do that. So here's an example of a mission statement by an organization that, well, you might say is, internally focused. It's all about their artistic product. It's about who they are and their vision for the organization. Here's another mission statement. And as you can see here, this is an organization that's focused on education, inspiration for their audience, and creating a great experience for their audience. So part of your assignment in this module is to sleuth out, hunt down a couple of examples of both an internally oriented mission statement and an externally oriented mission statement. And as I said earlier, the focus of an organization and the sort of driving intent of an organization is often reflected in the kind of mission statement that they have. So keep that in mind as you look around at other organizations and their mission statements. Let's talk a little bit about the role of the marketing director. At its most fundamental level, this is what a marketing director has to do. They've got to be a matchmaker, and they've got to line up their product and their consumers in a way that, and communicate with them in a way that they both are happy. But as we will see, this is a lot easier said than done. There's a lot of other roles because being an arts marketing professional is rich with complexity. In the commercial world, the customer reigns, always making sure the organization lives up to its brand promise. Keeping the desires and concerns of the audience in front of the organization is preeminent. Numbers may not lie, but you have to know how to tell their story. So pushing the company to center itself around the customer is important. And always being the proponent of improving the customer service, customer experience. I just want to touch for a moment on customer knowledge, as we will have a more in-depth look at that in Module 3. But I want to make the point that customer knowledge is sort of key to the basic matchmaker role that I mentioned earlier. Gathering some or all of this data begins to give you an idea of various market segments. This one example I'm showing you here is really a kind of a brief profile from research that we did several years ago here at the Seattle Symphony for a mid-level attendee. Of course, there are all sorts of segments that we think about, from families and millennials to empty nesters and retirees. This slide is fairly self-evident. The answer to this question is so we can better target, so that we can message appropriately, so that we can use the right channels to speak to our targeted audience, so that we can spend what is inevitably our limited marketing resources most wisely. So I want to talk now about the tools of marketing, and these are not the only tools, but these are the most powerful, and this represents sort of the everyday business of bringing in ticket sales, the operational aspect that requires a set of strategies and tactics all its own. Each of these tools has its strengths and weaknesses and places where they are most effective, both from a delivery standpoint and a cost perspective. And knowing how to deploy them in the most optimal way is really an ever-evolving process. Let's start with telemarketing. For literally decades, people have been predicting the death of telemarketing, yet it continues to be a reliable source of subscription sales and annual fund giving. And it works because it's personal. It helps to simplify our sometimes complicated offerings. It provides quick feedback on market reaction. It provides really strong return on investment, and and as a result is very measurable, and it more than pays for itself. I know in Seattle, we sell well over $1 million a year in subscription sales alone. Direct mail is also one of the power tools. We mail on the order of 1 million pieces annually. It's not just brochures, that's also postcards. We found that postcards are really kind of the convenience king of direct mail. All you have to do is turn it over. Postcards are really effective. We found in some recent data analysis that millennials do in fact respond to direct mail. And in some focus group work we did, thanks to the Wallace Foundation, we found that postcards were the favorite kind of direct mail of millennials. I suppose anything else just sort of required, too much effort and or was too much of a waste of paper. Effective direct mail, though, to the point here, is it requires some thought and expertise when it comes to segmentation, list segmentation. Who are you mailing to? What you are offering them and when you are mailing to them. So we employ a firm, actually, that to do a lot of the modeling and testing of our lists, and we found it to be well worth the investment. You don't have to use a firm, especially if you're a smaller organization, but if you've got the wherewithal, it can really help save time and make your marketing spend work even stronger for you. So we're also going to talk a bit about this in another segment, but there was a recent study by Wolf Brown Consultants and Capacity Interactive, a digital marketing firm, who are both focused on the performing arts world. And their study focused on media research, or media usage rather, of arts patrons, and the results are based on nearly 27,000 responses from ticket buyers across the US and Canada. And we're going to, as I mentioned, we will go through that report in Module 4 with Eric Gensler, the founder of Capacity Interactive. But suffice to say for now that e-commerce continues to change the marketing landscape. And here is just one quote from the guru of email marketing, really, Seth Godin. I recommend checking out Seth Godin's website and his books. This quote represents sort of the watershed difference between the old and the new marketing worlds. The old model was one of interruption, with messaging that might not have any relevance to you, and advertising you didn't ask for. So anticipated, personal, and relevant advertising always does better than unsolicited junk. And yet, we know junk mail still exists because in some level it still works. It's just not, if you've got lots of money to spend on your marketing budget, then maybe you can, risk doing it. But I don't know of an arts organization that has that. But anyway, to the point here, email has been around for 20 years and continues to be a really strong tool for marketers. Of course, there are other tools in the marketing toolkit. Here's one of, inventory management and pricing is a really important tool. It helps especially to be able to understand sales pacing as you're coming up to whatever performing arts event you might have, group sales, relationship marketing. And we'll talk a little bit about relationship marketing in our customer experience side, our customer experience module. Content marketing, press and promotions, we'll touch upon that later on. Audience education and experiential marketing are another couple of ones that we probably will want to talk about at some point here. But right now, I also want to just kind of doing this overview. One of the challenges that you have as an arts marketer is that time and money are limited, and how arts marketers spend their time and money is really critical. It's essential to prioritize what you based on the knowledge of your audience and with the tools at your disposal, and be able to make choices that maximize impact. I'm showing you this budget pie here just to give you a sense of how we have been spending our money at the Seattle Symphony. If you were to look at this pie from 3 years ago, digital would be less than half probably of what we're spending now, and print would have been about double what we're spending now. Direct mail and radio and telemarketing, at least for us, for an orchestra and musical performances, are still fairly effective ways for us to spend our money. But I want you to kind of think about this, because you only have so much that you can spend money on, and you have to really think carefully about where that money goes. Another aspect of marketing within an organization, and this is one that doesn't often get talked about um, when you're taking a class on marketing, but I want to talk about it here because the whole notion of balancing art and commerce is one that can get a little sticky within arts organizations, especially ones where the artistic director is, especially has an especially a strong role. But because the relationship can be fraught with some tension, and it takes really some willingness from the leadership of the organization to have more voices, not fewer, in the program creation process. Oftentimes, marketing is viewed as somehow tainting the artistic integrity of the organization by being a part of that conversation, and so consequently, marketing is often simply handed the product and say, okay, here's what you have to sell. Good luck, and we'll see you in a little while. I showed this picture of Andy Warhol because I thought, to me, Andy Warhol sort of represents this nexus in a way. Some people always thought he was way too commercial and wasn't an artist at all. Others loved his art. So what role should marketing play in the programming process? Well, you're there to provide more information because more information means better decisions. And that information tends to be credible sales data. Being able to understand seasonality, when people buy the most, when they buy the least, what are the hardest parts in the year to sell tickets. Generally, it's found to be that the beginning of a season, the September-October time periods, are the most challenging. And you want to be able to back up your opinions with some valid analysis, because programming choices matter. It matters what you do when you do it, and time of year, as I was mentioning with seasonality, matters as well. At the same time, you don't want to simply be that voice that says it'll never sell. I don't want to. We shouldn't be doing it. Because you have to also recognize that you're part of an arts organization, and not everything is always going to sell well. Some things are done for artistic purposes. And as long as the organization understands that and recognizes that as a budget consideration and as part of the mission, then that's fine. But I do want to say that this image right here is kind of what happens if you hold too dearly to the sacredness of artistic integrity. We want to fill seats and we want to do great artistic work. And the two things can coexist, and they can work well if it's done in an objective way with credible data and with a sincerity and a genuine understanding across the organization about the challenges. I want to end this segment with a little discussion around something I call the virtuous circle of audience development. I'm not sure if virtuous is really the right word. I suppose it's a kind of high-minded view of building an audience. The point, though, is that you need to be doing something to help along not just your new audiences, but also your long-time audiences. Most organizations do something along these lines, whether it's pre or post-performance discussions or informative emails or social media posts, whatever ways you can provide your audiences with more understanding. And studies will show that, studies do show that it leads to more loyal audiences. I wanted to put this slide in front of you so that, you can begin to think about the life cycle, not only the life cycle of patrons, but how it is that they enter into your organization and what it is that helps to bring them back. Because another theme that you're going to hear throughout this course is that it's important to get new audiences, but it's probably more important to spend the time and the effort that you can on the audiences that you already have, especially the new audiences that you bring in. Usually the rates for renewing a new audience member, fall well below 50%. So if you consider the fact that getting that new audience member, getting that new subscriber is a pretty expensive undertaking. But retaining that audience member is something that doesn't take nearly as much cost to do. And we'll talk about that some in the customer experience segment later on. But that's the end of today's presentation on the role of marketing and its importance in the organization.